Sultan Suleiman, nicknamed the Magnificent, was famous not only for his conquests and for causing European countries a lot of trouble, but also for his cruelty towards those closest to him, his children and grandchildren. One of the most terrible moments in the life of the Sultan was the execution of his son Bayezid and his 5 and, according to some data, 6 grandchildren. In this video, I will discuss some interesting points on this topic, including some rather controversial ones. Bayezid was Suleiman's youngest son with the exception of Jehangir, and initially his chances of taking the throne were relatively slim. After all, he had 2 older siblings, yes, his father's brother Mustafa. In character, Bayezid was about the same as he was shown to us in the TV series The Magnificent Century, a real rebel who was sure that he was loved less than other sons. But in reality, Bayezid was also a skillful manipulator. Many of his letters to his father have been preserved, in which the Shehzade tries to beg something from his father, and when he realizes that his father is in no hurry to give it to him, he begins to press the fact that his father does not love him too much. All this correspondence took place in verse form. By the way, Shehzade Bayezid wrote under the pseudonym Shahi. A strong rift between Bayezid and his father occurred around 1555. After the execution of Shehzade Mustafa, several people appeared in the Ottoman Empire claiming to be Shehzade Mustafa, who had miraculously escaped. One such false Mustafa even managed to create a small state within a state with personal viziers and a council. Suleiman desperately fought with this pest, and Shehzade Bayezid also took part in the struggle sort of on his father's side. But it turned out that Bayezid only slowed down the process of catching the ringleader. Therefore, many historians believe that it was Bayezid who initiated the appearance and functioning of false Mustafa. Sultan Suleiman had similar suspicions, and he even wanted to punish Bayezid, but he was prevented by Hurrem, who sided with his son. But with the death of Hurrem, the confrontation between Bayezid and Selim began to grow. Then Suleiman decided to transfer Bayezid to another sanjak, to Amasya, the place where Mustafa served the last years of his life and where he was also tacitly exiled by his father. Bayezid wanted to oppose, but his father offered him plushes in the form of an increase in annual salary by 300,000 akçe and positions of sanjakbi to Bayezid's sons in the vicinity of Amasya. However, Bayezid began to demand from his father even more pluses, increased salary to his sons as well. Shehzade Bayezid traveled a long way to Amasya, stopping in Ankara, from where he sent letters to his father. And when he arrived in Amasya, on December 21, 1558, he realized that he should not wait for the full promise of his father. Then he wrote him an angry letter demanding, if the promise was not fulfilled, to transfer him to another sanjak, Kütahya, Diyarbakir, Erzurum, Baghdad, or Aleppo. Sultan Suleiman, on the other hand, was stalling for time. Realizing his son's bellicose intentions, he obtained a fatwa for his execution. Bayezid probably did not know about this fatwa, but he was informed that Selim was gathering troops. Bayezid then decided to attack first and with an army of 15,000 men moved on Selim. In April 1559 he arrived in Ankara, from where he wrote a letter to his father to reassure him that he had come to Ankara just to rest, that he would stay here for a month and that he had no evil intentions. The Sultan did not believe him and sent military support to Selim. Shehzade Selim settled in a tent outside the city he ruled Konya and, according to the memories of his contemporaries, was terribly afraid of his brother's arrival, while the people around him tried to console him and strengthen his courage. When Bayezid, while in Ankara, learned that his father had been declared a rebel, he moved at once to Konya. He arrived there on May 29, and on May 30 a battle took place. Bayezid's troops suffered heavy losses, the Shehzade was forced to retreat and returned to Amasya. From there Bayezid wrote a letter to his father asking for pardon. But Suleiman was adamant. He authorized Selim to use all possible means to eliminate Bayezid. He himself appealed to various beylerbeys with a demand not to help Shehzade Bayezid, to detain him if possible and not to allow him to escape to remote areas of the Ottoman Empire, Crimea or to Iran. The one who succeeded in doing so was promised a large monetary reward and promotion. On July 7, 1559, early Friday morning, without waiting for his father's reply to his request for pardon, Shehzade Bayezid and his sons Orhan, Osman, Mahmud, and Abdullah, as well as the 10,000-strong army of the Shehzade, set out on their way. People saw off the Shehzade with tears in their eyes. His newborn son, 4 daughters, and his beloved woman remained in his palace. Bayezid and his army marched to the borders of Persia, where they stopped, intending to wait for Sultan Suleiman's reply. But it was clear that he would not forgive Bayezid. Moreover, his father's men were pursuing him. It became clear that there was no turning back. Then Bayezid wrote a letter to the governor of Revan, one of the Iranian provinces. Shehzade outlined the situation to him and asked for protection in his territory. The governor immediately wrote to Shah Tahmasp, the ruler of the empire. The latter was very happy with this news and ordered his governor to let the Shehzade in and give him a lavish reception. Shah Tahmasp was dealt a trump ace. For a long time he had been waiting for this moment, because once his brother, Elkaz Mirza, was in a similar situation in the Ottoman Empire. And in December 1559, Shehzade Bayezid already arrived to the Shah in the capital city of Qazvin. The Shah met Shehzade in a royal way, very rich and hospitable. According to the record in Nukbet-ud-Tariq, the Shah and Bayezid embraced like father and son at the moment of their first meeting, and exchanged expensive gifts, precious metals and stones. Qudas Farhad, one of Bayezid's advisors, noting the smallness of the Shah's personal guard and the general unpreparedness of his army, suggested that Shehzade Bayezid attack him and take him prisoner. After all, they had an army of 10 to 12,000 with them. However, Shehzade rejected this adventure at once. However, the Shah was informed that Shehzade Bayezid was planning an attack. As a result, their relations deteriorated, and on February 12, 1560, Shehzade Bayezid and his sons were imprisoned, and Shehzade's army was disbanded. Meanwhile, negotiations with Sultan Suleiman were underway. Month after month, an Ottoman delegation of about 200 men, which even included viziers, traveled between the Ottoman Empire and Iran, transmitting demands from Shah Tahmasp to Sultan Suleiman. And these demands, for the extradition of Bayezid, became more and more. Sultan Suleiman has already promised Tahmasp 1,200,000 gold, of which 300,000 was promised by Shehzade Selim, to give Iran the fortress of Kars, to put 2 trusted men of the Shah in the leadership of Baghdad. It is said that Shah Tahmasp even demanded to give him Baghdad, captured by Sultan Suleiman in 1534. And Selim assured the Shah that he would remain good friends forever. Shehzade Bayezid and his sons were extradited to the Ottoman side on July 23, 1562. It is said that it happened at a banquet organized by Shah Tahmasp to which Shehzade Bayezid and his sons, who had been in prison for 2.5 years, were invited. Bayezid was wearing a torn shirt on his back, a torn turban, unwashed, but with a shaved beard, so that he could be identified, allegedly. Further, after identification, they were executed. This part of the story seems a little strange to me. The execution of Shehzade Bayezid and his sons took place on September 25 in the same city, in Qazvin. Why did they wait 2 months? The execution took place at the equestrian Ristalish, a place where equestrian competitions were held in Qazvin. By the way, 14 years later the new Iranian Shah Ismail II, son of Tahmasp, executed his 2 brothers on the same place. Bayezid's dying wish to see his sons before his death was not fulfilled. The bodies of Bayezid and his sons were immediately embalmed and taken by cart to the city of Van, from where they were to be transported for burial in Bursa or Istanbul. On the way, however, a message was received from Sultan Suleiman that the Shehzade and his sons should be buried in Shivas, Anatolia. In the Magnificent Age, we were shown that Shehzade Bayezid's young son, born Defne, was also executed. In reality, such a fate, indeed, befell this little boy. He was first transported from Amasya to Bursa, where he was executed. He was buried next to Shehzade Mustafa. There is another interesting fact that I want to share with you. It is said that Bayezid's newborn son named Suleiman, born after his execution, was also executed. Suleiman's execution took place on October 3 in Bursa. It is stated that this Shehzade was born in Amasya and was transported to Bursa. Personally, I find this story dubious. For 2.5 years Bayezid was in a dungeon. It is unlikely that concubines were taken to him there. And how did this pregnant concubine get to Amasya? Have you read anything on the subject? By the way, Shah Tahmasp received a lot of money from Sultan Suleiman for giving away the Shehzade. Tahmasp did not get the fortress of Kars, and in gold he was deprived. Instead of 1,200,000 he was given only 500,000.